Good Friday, North Melbourne and Carlton. I want to take a look at Carlton and where they've been and are they ruthless enough? So let's take a look at probably the last 7 games that they've played. So back from round 20 last year to now. So lost by 29 points, then lost by 33. But it's when they get in winning positions, why can't they go on with it? So they lost by 5 points but had an 8-point lead in round 22 v Melbourne. Then the next week they're up by 25 against the Pies, lose by 1. Up by 14, Jim, in round 1, have a draw, 28-point lead in round 2, win by 8 points, and then they never got ahead much from the Giants. So it should be a 60-pointer if they're fair income this week. Yeah,
the last couple of times these games here, I've seen their last quarter almost trying not to lose instead of trying to win. I know that sounds really simplistic, but yeah, their forwards come so high out, they go slow behind the mark, they're trying to take the clock down. Instead of playing with that same tempo that got them these really good positions to start with.
They should be winning big, and you saw a worry for North Melbourne against the Hawks last week.
Yeah, I did, in particular the first half. Now, they came back into the game, but this is just a slow and call it an unsexy possession from the Hawks. But this, you've got to close out these releases because it's almost like the knock-on effect. The next one comes, and we've got all these North Melbourne players just jogging through the ground. And what ends up happening is, when the ball's here for Newcombe, 1, and here, Zeebel's having to defend 2. There's so much space because all these guys haven't cut out the releases. If you get up on top of this, you turn the ball over and you give yourself an opportunity against a really good side in Carlton. 130 marks, uncontested marks they gave up last week, and this will be what happens to you. You just give them too much space and you give them too much territory to pick out Mackay and Curnow inside forward 50.
And there's no Ben Mackay for North and there's no Griffin Logue. So good luck. If there's no pressure on the ball, Mackay and Curnow should be kicking 10 goals between them.
Well, I'm going the Blues, Lloydie. If they are serious about making that next step, they put North Melbourne away.
Yeah, so I just want to highlight 2 midfielders for North Melbourne. So there was no Simpkin and no davies-uniacke last weekend, and they were exposed by Hawthorn. But just want to highlight that he's back in, Luke Davies-Uniacke, one of the stories of the season, just his size and his power. So that's Jaeger O'Meara. This was the week before when Luke got the 10 coaches votes, round 1 and 2. Just his power in the contest. I can't wait to see him take on the likes of Cripps and Hewitt and Kennedy. This is another one. Chapman pushed off the ball. Davies-Uniacke is away.
Yeah, and they're getting involved in the attack now. This has been the next layer for he and Simpkin. They're inside forward 50s. They're trying to hit the scoreboard, so they're punishing the opposition away from these contested situations.
The hard part for them is it's 2 of them up against 6 or 7, so those 2 need to be really important against Carlton. Just wanted to highlight a guy who's made a huge impact for Carlton in his first 3 games. Just an old-fashioned, reminds me like a Scotty Camperelli or one of these old-school Carlton wingmen. So his ability to get back and support his defender, we saw it in round 1, how good he's been. He's actually ran further than any other player on the field in his first 3 games of AFL football.
Well, he from the wingers, what we just spoke about before for North Melbourne, he cuts out the opposition's release. Again, it's not the sexy stuff or the glamour stuff, but it actually stops the opposition cold really high up the ground. But then you're a good release when your team turns the footy over.
So here he is. He's still working hard, and the courage of his ability to get in front of Jeremy Cameron here.
Yeah, just helping out your teammates. That's how you create the extra defender without actually sitting the number back.
Carlton, obviously.
Yeah, I went Carlton early, didn't I?
As well. Richmond and the Western Bulldogs, Jim, you wanted to highlight. I just want to highlight first. The Dogs are ranked 18th for points forward, just cannot score, only 58 points a week. Richmond aren't much better, only 72, but the change you saw in the Dogs last week, Jim.
Yeah, well, we asked for it on our big screen here last week. It's ground ball gets and handball receives. It's that run from behind and carry, and it actually gets them up in their half. Now, the next step for them is actually that composure going inside forward 50, Lloydie, where they're struggling to score a bit, but at least the game is away from their back line, and we see that overlap and more dynamic midfield group in particular.
And we saw Richmond after half-time could only score 1 goal against Collingwood in the first half, but they were bolder. They brought Noah Cumberland on, and they need to play with some more risk. I just don't think they're defending the ground that well, Jim.
Yep.
But, you know, guys like Bolton and Martin just taking the game on and challenging this Dogs defence.
They just look better when the ball's in a bit more chaos and they're thinking about it on the way through. Obviously, you mentioned Cumberland. He does that naturally, but you start to get these looks where Lynch can move across forward 50 and you win the territory.
I'm not sure where Richmond stand, to be honest, and where they sit. Are they an 8th ranked team? I don't think they're a top 4 team at all. And I saw Marcus Bontempelli stand up for his club last weekend. Just want to show a few clips of what Bont did for his team, Jim, early in the game.
He sets such a high bar and we ask a lot out of him and he normally delivers. But this in particular for me, it just looked like on the weekend he owned the game and he was aggressive even in his tackle and just standing up to the opposition. And the champ here, Lloydie, Dustin Martin, you feel like he'll do the same?
I just feel like setting Dustin a challenge. How hungry are you? How much do you want it? I think your team desperately needs you and Bolton. I think Liam Baker's the one Richmond player who's standing up. not enough other players are. But I'm going to tip the Western Bulldogs in this one, Jim.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think the Bulldogs by only a kick.
That's 3 games, Ed.